The instructions on the paper were printed in bold black letters. Transfer protocol. Count to 3. Pivot chair at 45 degrees. Emma had followed them precisely, step by careful step. Jonathan snatched the sheet from the nightstand, jaw tight. The evidence was undeniable. Margaret's shaking hand reached for Emma's. "She didn't abandon me, Jonathan," he rasped. "She kept me from hitting the floor. Without her, you would have walked in to find me broken, lying on the ground." Emma's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she forced the words out. "I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because he asked me not to give up." Jonathan's sharp gaze flicked between his father, frail, drenched in sweat yet upright in the wheelchair, and Emma, her arms still trembling, apron clinging damply to her. Every detail of strain etched across her frame. His voice cracked, a mixture of guilt and awe. I thought I saw something else." Margaret's gray eyes hardened, voice steady despite his weakness. "Then you saw wrong, and you should be ashamed of yourself." The room fell silent. Jonathan lowered his head, the polished soles of his shoes squeaking as he knelt beside the wheelchair. "Father, Emma, I'm sorry. I misjudged what I saw." Margaret shook his head slowly. "Don't apologize to me. Apologize to her. She's the one carrying my weight." Jonathan turned fully to Emma, voice low but sincere. "I should have trusted you. Instead, I let my suspicion blind me. That won't happen again." Emma swallowed, voice soft yet firm. "All I ask is that he gets the care he deserves. One person can't replace a therapist. It's dangerous, for him and for me, if I try to do it alone." Jonathan's jaw tightened, resolve hardening in his eyes. "The manager who canceled these sessions will be held accountable. I'll reinstate them immediately, and double them if necessary. And you," he said, locking eyes with Emma, "will never have to carry this burden alone again." Emma's lips trembled, relief breaking through the tension that had held her body rigid. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. Margaret let out a shaky laugh, weak but tinged with pride. "Seems the boy still listens when it matters," he murmured. Jonathan's expression softened, the weight of the morning's misunderstanding lifting. "I almost failed both of you today, but I'll make it right." He reached for the wheelchair handles, hands steady, posture resolute, determined to ensure his father's safety, and to honor the courage and devotion Emma had shown every single step of the way. For the first time in months, Margaret allowed himself to settle back into the wheelchair, a quiet pride flickering in his eyes. Emma stayed close, one hand resting lightly on his shoulder, offering support without ever diminishing his dignity. She had poured nearly every ounce of her strength into keeping him upright. Yet the determination in her gaze made it clear she would do it all again, if it meant preserving his sense of self. Jonathan finally understood. Not weakness, not scandal. What he had witnessed was courage, devotion, and sacrifice. Emma had carried more than just physical weight. She had carried respect for a man fighting to reclaim his independence. And in that moment, Jonathan realized how dangerous it is to let suspicion overshadow truth. When we rush to judgment, we risk undermining the very people who dedicate themselves most to us. Margaret exhaled, sweat still glistening on his temples, yet his voice was calm. "She's been my anchor, my balance. She believed in me when I struggled to believe in myself." Emma's lips quivered, but she held his shoulder firmly. "Every step matters," she said softly. "It's not about speed. It's about not giving up together." Jonathan knelt beside them, his earlier judgment melting into gratitude. "I see it now," he said, voice steady. "Your loyalty, your strength, it's unmatched. I almost failed to notice it. I won't again." The room settled into a quiet reverence. Each heartbeat, each breath, a reminder that compassion and trust often demand more than we imagine. In that moment, the fear of misunderstanding gave way to understanding, and the bonds forged through care and patience became unmistakably clear. Sometimes, the greatest courage is quiet, unseen, and steadfast. And sometimes it takes stepping back to truly see it. "Take it slow, Jonathan. Just breathe," Emma whispered, her hands firm against the edge of the bed. Jonathan froze at the doorway, chest tight. Margaret, his father, clung to Emma, sweat streaking his gray temples, trembling as if the world itself threatened to slip away. The scene looked alarming, but the truth beneath it was far more profound. A story of patience, Devotion and courage. Emma shifted, bracing her feet against the polished floor. Black uniform stretched tight as she leaned into Margaret's weight. "You're steadier than yesterday," she murmured, checking the tilt of his shoulders. Margaret groaned, his voice rasping. "Steadier? I feel like I'm holding onto a storm. My knees won't cooperate." "Then let me hold the storm," she said, her eyes calm, her body taut like a shield. "Don't fight me. Just lean." He gripped her shoulder, not with command but with trust. "I never imagined I'd be here, clinging to someone half my size." "You're not just clinging," Emma said softly. "You're fighting to walk again. That counts more than you know." Margaret laughed, a brittle, bitter sound. "Fighting? It feels more like flailing sometimes." Emma's back burned, her arms screaming under his weight, but she steadied him inch by painstaking inch. "Every second counts," she said. "Every step is yours, and I'll be here until you take it." For the first time in months, Margaret straightened slightly, his gaze meeting hers with a flicker of pride. A once mighty man, humbled yet unbroken, reminded that strength often wears a quiet, unseen face. "Do you know what it's like to go from running a company to needing someone to help you stand?" Emma's voice trembled, but she kept her hands firm on Margaret's arms. Margaret's gray face glistened with sweat, his chest heaving. I never thought I'd end up like this," he admitted, voice breaking. "Strapped to this chair, needing help to do the simplest things." Emma swallowed, throat tight. "I know what it's like to lose dignity," she whispered. "Maybe not exactly like you, but I understand what it feels like to feel powerless." Margaret's gaze softened toward her. You're young, strong?" Her arms shook under his weight, but she held him steady. "Strong doesn't mean untouched," she said. "I grew up caring more than I should. Maybe that's why I can hold you now." He exhaled shakily, the sound rattling in his chest. "I hate that my son sees me like this," he murmured. "Once he looked at me like I was unbreakable. Now he avoids my eyes, afraid of the truth." Emma blinked back tears. "Then let me help you stand when he's not looking. So you remember who you are." "Before he walks through that door." Margaret leaned more heavily, his legs trembling like brittle branches. Emma planted her feet firmly. "Careful," she urged. "I've got you. But you need to breathe with me, slow, in and out." He tried to match her rhythm, each inhale rasping like gravel in his throat. "If I fall," he began, voice frail. "You won't," Emma interrupted firmly. "Because I'm not letting go." He swallowed, gaze dropping. "Why do you care so much, Emma?" Her arms shook, sweat dripping from her brow. "Because no one held me when I needed it. And because you deserve more than pity. You deserve someone who believes in you." Margaret's lips quivered. You sound like my late wife," he whispered. Emma's chest tightened. "Then maybe she sent me," she said softly. For a long moment, silence filled the room, broken only by the synchronized pounding of two hearts carrying one another's weight. Suddenly, Margaret's knees buckled, and his body lurched forward, dragging Emma with him. A sharp cry escaped her lips. "Mr. Wells!" She fought to hold him, nails digging into the edge of the bedspread, her back straining to the limit. "Stay with me. Don't let go." His arms clamped around her shoulders, desperation etched across his sweat-dampened face. "Don't drop me, please." "I won't," she gasped, her apron soaked, muscles trembling. "I promised." "I won't." They froze like that, his body bending over hers, her frame taut like a bridge bracing a collapsing weight. His breath was hot against her neck, voice trembling with shame. "This isn't how my son should see me," he murmured. Emma closed her eyes, every muscle screaming, holding steady. "Then he won't. We'll finish this. Just the two of us." But fate intervened. The door creaked open. Heavy footsteps echoed across the polished floor, the shadow of a tall figure stretching across the room, bringing the world crashing back in. "Father." The voice was low, controlled but carried an edge of alarm. Emma froze, hands still pressed against Margaret as he leaned heavily into her. She didn't need to look, she knew who it was. Jonathan Wells, the man in the tailored brown suit standing in the doorway, eyes sharp and assessing. To a casual observer, the scene might have seemed improper. A young woman bent forward, an elderly man trembling and clinging to her. But the truth was far simpler and far more human. Courage, trust, and sheer necessity. Margaret's knees wobbled again, and Emma's arms quaked under his weight. Every muscle in her back screamed, but she tightened her hold, grit pressing through the strain. "Just a little more, Mr. Wells," she whispered through clenched teeth. "The chair's right here." "We can do this," Margaret groaned, voice weak yet firm. "Steady me. Please, Emma, don't let me fall." Emma's shoes squeaked against the polished floor as she guided him down, inch by painstaking inch. His weight pressed her shoulders like iron, but slowly, with patience and careful leverage, she lowered him until he finally sank into the black wheelchair. His chest heaved, ragged breath shuddering through his sweat-dampened shirt. Emma stumbled back, collapsing briefly against the bed frame, gasping for air. Her apron clung to her damp skin, arms quivering from the effort. Yet she straightened herself, knowing the man in the doorway was watching. Jonathan Wells stood like a statue, brown suit immaculate, gaze sharp and unyielding. "What?" he began slowly. "Did I just witness?" Emma's throat tightened. Words tangled behind it. She knew how it looked, bent forward, supporting his weight. But the reality was far simpler, far more necessary. She opened her mouth to explain, and Margaret lifted his head weakly, eyes meeting Jonathan's. "Don't look at her like that, Jonathan," he said, voice steady despite the tremor in his body. "She's helping me, helping you too." Jonathan's eyes narrowed, a flash of disbelief in his gaze. Emma finally spoke, voice quivering but resolute. "There was no one else. The therapist was supposed to come this morning, but the session was canceled again." "Canceled?" Jonathan's brow furrowed. "Why?" "The house manager said it was too expensive to maintain twice a week," Emma said, careful and precise. "He told me to just follow the printed steps." "I did exactly that. But when Mr. Wells's leg gave out, I had no choice but to brace him." She gestured to the folded instruction sheet lying on the nightstand, a small testament to the careful plan she had followed. Her voice softened, almost pleading. "I did what I could. He's fragile, but he needs support. And I could not let him fall." Jonathan's jaw tightened. For a moment, the only sound was the quiet rattle of Margaret's breathing and the subtle creak of the wheelchair. The tension hung heavy, but slowly, understanding dawned. What had seemed alarming was simply devotion in action. Margaret exhaled shakily, leaning back into the chair, sweat dripping from his temples. "She saved me," he murmured. "In more ways than you know." Emma's arms dropped, exhausted but steady. Jonathan's gaze softened, acknowledgement and gratitude flickering across his face. For the first time that morning, the air in the room carried something warmer than shock, a quiet respect, earned through struggle and unwavering care.